So in the last lecture, we talked about how to insert data into MongoDB using the Java driver, and now we're going to talk about how to do simple queries, including a review of find one, how to find all the documents in a collection, and how to count the documents in a collection. So as not to waste time, I already wrote the boilerplate code, same as last time, creating a client, a database, and a collection, and then dropping the collection. And since we're querying, I also wrote a little code to insert some documents into the collection. So I'm inserting 10 documents, each with a object ID for the underscore ID and a field X with a random integer between 0 and 99 as the value. And now let's go to the queries. So let's look at a simple find one. Again, this is a review from last week. So we can say db object doc or one equals collection dot find one. And then we can print it out. Let's see what that does. Here's the printout. Remember that the underscore ID will be created automatically by the driver, and here's the random X value of 86. Okay, so that's find one, pretty simple. Now let's look at find, which is a little bit more verbose, and I'll explain why in a moment. So for find, we actually have to create a cursor. So we call collection.find, which returns a cursor. And as you learned from Richard earlier, there's actually a cursor on the server. So the reason we have to save it like this is because we're going to need to close it in a little while. So I'm going to put this inside a finally block, try finally rather, and say cursor.close here to make sure the cursor gets closed even if I exit abnormally from the try. And inside the cursor I'll say while cursor.hasNext, and then db object car equals cursor.next, and then I'll print it out. So let's see what this does first, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it. So it prints out all the documents, all 10 documents in the collection. So the cursor is an iterator. So if you look at db cursor, you can see that it's an iterator of db object. So that's where the hasNext and the next method come from. And they obviously have the semantics of Java iterators. So the hasNext method will return true if calling next will return a document, otherwise it will return false. And next will return a document, and if you call next when hasNext return false, it's going to throw an exception. And one important thing to remember is that you need to call close. I mean, with 10 documents it doesn't matter because there won't be a cursor on the server, but if you're iterating through hundreds of documents or thousands, you have to remember to close the cursor, especially if your loop terminates abnormally. Like if you throw an exception within this while loop, you want to make sure that cursor is closed, even if you didn't exhaust it on the server. Okay, and finally let's talk about count. Count's very simple also. You just can say collection.count. We can print it out. And let's see what that does. It should print out 10. And it does. And that's it. That's the basics of find one, find, and count. In the next lesson, we'll talk about how to limit the results based on a query. Okay, let's look at a quiz. All right, in the following code snippet, please enter the simplest one line of Java code that would be needed in place of the XXXX to make it print one document from the people collection created here, assuming there is a document there. Don't worry about white space. I believe it will be stripped, but don't put any extra things in there like comments or anything like that. And notice also that the print line is already in the bottom, so you don't have to actually print it yourself.